Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's public hearing for Tuesday, April 5th, 2022, relative to Bill 2021-1707. My name is Deborah Gross and I am the representative for District 7, and I also chair the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 1707, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title 9, Zoning Article 1, Section 90203, zoning map, and amending Article 3, Overlay Zoning District, Chapter 907, Development Overlay District 90704A, to expand the boundaries of the Inclusionary Overlay District.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For the record, we are not joined by council members in chambers, but members may join us shortly, and they also may be viewing remotely. The first order of business will be an introduction and presentation by members of the Planning Department, Andrea Lavin-Kosis and Philip Wu. Are you there? Councilman Wilson, welcome. For the record, we are joined by Councilman Wilson. Do we have our planners from the Planning Department online? We don't see you yet.
Yes, we're here.
Yes, I'm here.
You can turn your cameras on to join us so that we can see you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And if you could identify yourselves for the record and please give us a brief presentation on the legislation.
I'm Andrea Lavin-Kosis. I'm Planning Manager in the Department of City Planning. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Philip Wu, who's going to be doing the presentation today. He's the planner for the Bloomfield neighborhood.
Hi, everyone. I'm Philip Wu, as Andrea mentioned, neighborhood planner for Bloomfield and parts of the East End. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, please continue with your presentation.
This is not the window I was trying to share. 1 second here. Oh, here we go. Not sure why it's. Okay, can everyone see the presentation on the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right, does this look good here? Okay. Thank you, council members. As Andrea mentioned, I'll be walking through the inclusionary zoning presentation here. So first, just walking through what inclusionary housing and what inclusionary zoning are, where we have already seen it here in the city, what it will look like for the neighborhoods of Polish Hill and Bloomfield, and how the housing units affected will be priced, and at what income levels people can participate, and then some recent steps that we have taken as far as community process and notification. So first, just to recap for everyone, what is inclusionary zoning? Inclusionary zoning is a tool in the zoning code that ties the construction of affordable housing to the construction of market rate housing. So in other words, it makes affordable housing part of a package deal to be able to build market rate housing of a certain density. And it means that the zoning code requires that new residential development make a certain percentage of total housing units in that development affordable to low to moderate income residents. Here in Pittsburgh, we have two types of inclusionary zoning. And what we started out with is called incentivized inclusionary zoning. And while we are using that in certain places at this time, we've also implemented mandatory inclusionary zoning. And we'll get into what each of those are in the next couple slides. So what is incentivized inclusionary zoning? This is a form of inclusionary zoning where the developer can choose to price some of their housing units at prices that are affordable to low to moderate income residents in exchange for some benefits. For example, increased heights or density or closer proximity to the river. In our zoning codes, we have the RIV districts, riverfront zoning, as well as the Uptown Public Realm District, UPR, which are shown as blue and red on this map respectively. And those are areas that have incentivized inclusionary zoning baked in. So it's it's areas where there's an incentive system that we call performance points. What we're looking at today for Bloomfield and Polish Hill is known as mandatory inclusionary zoning. So in this case, developers who want to build over a certain number of units, in this case 20 or more units, have to include affordably priced housing units in their development and do not receive any special incentive or bonus. So the current inclusionary housing overlay districts, IZO, is already implemented in Lawrenceville. So this would be an expansion of that overlay. And just to recap what an overlay district is, an overlay is a zoning layer that's placed on top of the existing zoning districts and adds certain conditions on top of that. So in this case, the additional condition is that affordable housing for certain types of developments must be included. And here's just a map showing what the expanded IZO district will look like when you add Polish Hill and Bloomfield. And since we piloted IZO in Lawrenceville, that the affordable housing requirements have influenced the pricing of 40 units available or under construction, 35 of which are for rent and 5 which are for sale. So just a quick timeline of how we got to this point. In 2016, the Affordable Housing Task Force was convened, and the next year that was followed by an exploratory committee to look at inclusionary zoning. In 2019, a pilot inclusionary housing ordinance was implemented in Lawrenceville, and then that was made permanent in 2021. And then later that year, the expansion was proposed by Councilwoman Gross for Bloomfield and Polish Hill. And again, that took place last year in July, and it affects projects of new construction, substantial rehabilitation, or conversion or reuse when those projects include 20 or more residential units for sale or for rent. So how many units will need to be priced affordably? 10% of units in buildings with 20 or more housing units will need to be priced to be affordable to low to moderate income residents. Obviously, not every building will have an even number or a number that calculates into a whole number of housing units that are required to be affordable. So we always require developers to round up. So for example, if a developer wants to build 21 units, 10% of 21 is 2.1. And in that situation, we require rounding up to 3 units, not down to 2. So what income levels qualify to live in designated affordable units? As a renter, the household cannot earn more than 50% of the area median income. And for potential homeowners, that cutoff is at 80% of area median income. So what exactly is area median income, or AMI for short? AMI is the median of a metropolitan region's household income distribution. So it's a number that's calculated every year by HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In the case of Pittsburgh, the AMI figure represents the median income for our 7-county region. So that includes Allegheny, Armstrong, Beaver, Butler, Fayette, Washington, and Westmoreland counties. The numbers for 2022 as far as AMI are still pending. But in 2021, for one person household, 50% AMI was just under 30,000 a year in our metropolitan area. For a 4-person household, that is 42,400. And how will these inclusionary units be priced? So common calculation for housing affordability is 30% of one's income. And in this case, the affordable units will need to be priced at no more than 30% of income for qualifying residents. So for example, a 3-person household living in a 2-bedroom unit that's renting their apartment, 50% AMI for a 3-person household is 38,200. And 30% in terms of their monthly income would be $955 of rent per month. And that's supposed to be inclusive of utilities as well. So as you can see here, 2 bedrooms, 50% AMI, assuming a 3-person household, including utilities, comes out to be $955 per month in rent. How long are housing units supposed to remain affordable or affordably priced? So in the legislation, that minimum period is 35 years for both for sale and for rent units. Obviously, AMI levels are going to change every year. So, rent rates, incomes, those won't stay the same in terms of sheer dollar numbers, but the percentages are what will stay constant over that 35-year period. As far as differentiating between affordable units and market rate units, there's not supposed to be a difference between the two in any given development. So the affordable units will need to be scattered throughout the building. They can't just be clustered in one area. There is one exception, and I'll go over that in the next slide. Also, the finishings, the quality of the construction, the amenities, all those things also cannot differ between affordable and market rate units, as well as the size of the apartments. So what happens if a developer, for some reason, can't get all of the needed affordable units on the same site? There is an option for them, in that case, to provide affordable units at another site within a quarter-mile away. And this, this has to be approved as a special exception, so it's not by right. And if the developer is going to do these off-site units, the requirements for affordability is bumped up to 12% of total units rather than just the base 10%. So this is just kind of a diagram showing, illustrating a hypothetical example of what that might look like in Lawrenceville. And last thing here is just a few of the recent steps that we've taken up to this point in the past couple months. So we had our final formal community engagement around inclusionary zoning in Polish Hill and Bloomfield in December, at which we presented to those two communities at a development activities meeting in December. And then the Planning Commission voted in January to recommend approval of the overlay to council. In March, we had postcards mailed to more than 3,600 households, both in Polish Hill and Bloomfield, as well as within 100 feet of the boundaries of those two neighborhoods. And then we also posted notices at major intersections in both of those neighborhoods. We had 40 posted in Bloomfield and 10 in Polish Hill, again, also earlier in March. So more information about the overlay and inclusionary zoning in general can be found at our Engage PGH project page at engage.pittsburghpa.gov/IZODX. And that's all I have. Andrea and Christopher, my colleagues who were part of the Lawrenceville process, are here to answer any questions that folks may have. And thank you again to all the council members for your support and feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. And just for the record, this as a public hearing, we will not be doing interrogatory. So we'll move on to the part of the hearing where we hear from registered speakers. And so I'm just giving an alert to all of the speakers who are waiting online. We have most of our callers online. And as a reminder, if you've called in on a telephone, when you are unmuted and your name is called, you also have to hit on your keyboard on your phone *6 so that we can hear you. And I'll be reading two names just to give the person a heads up who've been waiting. So I know how it is to wait for a long time for your turn to speak. So I'll call the first name and then I'll give a note. I'll call the second name for the person so they can be standing by. First, we have Jody Lincoln, and Ms. Lincoln will be followed by Stephanie Pavlik. Ms. Lincoln, are you there?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. You can just give us your name and neighborhood for the record.
Yep, Jody Lincoln. I'm a Bloomfield resident speaking in support of inclusionary zoning. As a professional affordable housing developer, I know the importance and difficulty of creating affordable housing. I think the facts and multiple reports the city of Pittsburgh has completed over the past few years speaks for itself in terms of the need. Inclusionary zoning is but one of the many tools that we have as a community to create affordable housing in our neighborhood. Incentivizes for-profit developers who would not otherwise provide affordable housing on their sites to be able to create housing that can be for everyone and not just people who can afford the highest end luxury market rents. I hope that the city can consider the success that we've seen in Lawrenceville, bringing a few projects to pencil and construction that are ongoing now. Unfortunately for Lawrenceville, the inclusionary zoning came on a little too late to affect some of the largest developments they saw in their neighborhood. And our hope is in Bloomfield and Polish Hill that as some of the sites, including the SureSave site, become redeveloped into these larger apartment buildings, we have the opportunity to make sure that some affordable housing units are included in their development. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Lincoln. Next, we have Stephanie Pavlik, and Ms. Pavlik will be followed by David Weber. Stephanie Pavlik, are you with us?
Yeah, hello, thank you. Council, hello everyone, I'm Stephanie. I live in Bloomfield and I'd like to voice my concerns with this version of the inclusionary zoning proposal. I do appreciate a commitment to affordable housing. As mentioned, rents continue to go up. It's getting less and less affordable for many residents in our community. However, I do feel that given the kind of hyper-local nature of Pittsburgh, I'm skeptical of the approach in Lawrenceville, also fitting Bloomfield. Most of the recent construction I've seen has been far less than 20 units. And many of it's remodeled housing that's already been here. The only really that I know of potential construction is the SureSave site, which I know many community members, it's kind of a separate but related conversation, have concerns with that as well due to things like transportation. But in addition, just 10% is a pretty low number. I would definitely like to see that number be a bit higher, 20 or even 30%. So I definitely appreciate this iteration, but I think it is lacking in a few ways for what our community needs to be affordable for all its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pavlik. Next, we'll have David Weber and then John Hanrahan.
Yes, hello, and thank you, members of council and others who are participating. My name is David Weber, and I live in Bloomfield. I do strongly support adoption of the overlay district. I did submit slightly more lengthy written comments for review, but in order to try to stay to the 3 minutes, I'll just touch on the highlights. I do support the adoption of the inclusionary zoning provisions and would encourage the administration and all stakeholders to develop and implement inclusionary zoning provisions on a citywide basis. There are several reasons I support this overlay and expansion citywide. First, inclusionary zoning is not a new strategy. For example, Montgomery County, Maryland began their program in 1977. And while not all inclusionary zoning ordinances have been successful, inclusionary zoning policies have been implemented in hundreds of jurisdictions nationwide. Second, I think it's important to realize that inclusionary zoning is not a strategy that will significantly change the shortage of affordable housing. The demand is just too high. That will require other actions, primarily more funding, as well as more fundamental changes to land use policies and restrictions. Rather, inclusionary zoning is a strategy that will improve the equity and fairness of current housing options. Since the mid-1990s, we have focused both nationally and locally on replacing concentrations of publicly assisted low-income housing, like public housing, with mixed income housing, encouraging and incentivizing the inclusion of market rate housing within still largely assisted and affordable housing developments. Unfortunately, we have not done anything parallel in our private housing market. Inclusionary zoning represents a policy step, if only a small one, to promote and preserve the mixed income characteristics of healthy neighborhoods. Third, as one of the other speakers mentioned, we are a little bit late to this approach. Much high density market rate rental housing, as well as owner housing, has been built recently and is being built in many city neighborhoods. Lawrenceville, Oakland, Shadyside, and East Liberty would stand out in this area. The longer we wait, the less successful we will be. Fourth, there's no indication that adopting well-designed inclusionary zoning provisions hinders development. On the most practical level, if the market is strong enough to support a development of 20 or more units at market rates, then it's probably strong enough to have 18 of those units marginally support keeping 2 of those units affordable. The same could be said for a 300-unit development. In a summary of HUD-sponsored research published in the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Policy Development and Research publication, The Edge, they stated, and I quote, "For developers, predictability appears to be the most important element of an inclusionary zoning program. They consider clear requirements and consistent."
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Next, we'll have John Hanrahan, followed by John Rhodes. Mr. Hanrahan, you can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is John Hanrahan. I'm a resident of the Fineview neighborhood on the north side in Bobby Wilson's district, and I'm a member of the board of the Fineview Citizens Council. Our neighborhood on the north side has seen significant inflation in housing costs in recent years, though of course not quite to the same extent as Lawrenceville, Bloomfield, and Polish Hill. In order to prevent the harms of high housing costs in our neighborhood and throughout the city, we need policy changes at all levels of government, of course. We need funding for public house maintenance and expansion from the feds. We need good cause eviction protections from the state, a guaranteed right to counsel for tenants in housing court from the county. And in Pittsburgh, we need a citywide inclusionary zoning overlay that triples, quadruples down on what we've already done in Lawrenceville. To echo what Stephanie and David have already said, we need higher requirements of developers, including acceptance of housing choice vouchers, longer timetables than 35 years, requiring inclusionary zoning with developments of 5+ units, not 20. I support the Bloomfield and Polish Hill inclusionary zoning overlay as a first step.
Thank you, Mr. Hanrahan. Next, we have John Rhodes, followed by Sam Spearing. Mr. Rhodes, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is John Rhodes. I live at 3030 Wigan Street in Polish Hill. I serve as the chair of the Housing and Development Committee for the PHCA, the registered community organization for our neighborhood. And I'm here to speak in favor of expanding inclusionary zoning to Polish Hill and Bloomfield. First off, I want to thank Councilwoman Gross for her leadership on this. She brought the iPod into Lawrenceville several years ago, worked diligently to make that overlay permanent, and now works to expand this powerful tool to other neighborhoods who've advocated for years to bring more affordable options into our communities. I also want to express our gratitude to Mayor Gainey, who's been an outspoken advocate for expanding inclusionary zoning, and we are grateful for his support. Next, I want to thank the dedicated civil servants in the planning and zoning departments who have been the shepherds of this proposal. From the hours and hours you've put into sending thousands of notices, fielding tons of calls and emails, prepping and delivering the presentations to neighborhood groups and governing bodies, plus all the other stuff that we don't even know about. I'm really grateful. And I know my neighbors are too, for all your dedication to making our neighborhood a better place, with an extra special thanks to Andrea and Phil, who I know bore the brunt of the work on this. Now, to speak directly to why the PHCA is asking for inclusionary zoning to expand our neighborhood, community members are being priced out. For instance, in Polish Hill, the median sale price in the neighborhood from 2015 to 2018 has more than tripled, from just shy of $70,000 to over $210,000. Many neighbors know someone who has been displaced from the home they were renting or priced out of the opportunity of owning in their neighborhood. According to the Forge PGH website, 36% of renters in our neighborhood are cost burdened. There are imminent developments that could reshape our neighborhood, and we want to be able to preserve a balanced approach to development that ensures people of all income levels can find a home. The PHCA is pursuing many different approaches to promoting affordability in our neighborhood, and expanding inclusionary zoning will be one very important aspect of our multi-pronged approach. That said, a successful strategy for affordability must be mindful of a large integrated geographic area. That's one reason we work in close collaboration with our adjacent community organizations. We also work with them because we are inspired and strengthened by working with them. This effort to expand the IZO is a shining example of that. Thus, we ask for the thus we're asking for council to support bringing inclusionary zoning to Polish Hill and Bloomfield. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Next, we have Sam Spearing, followed by John Carson. Sam, you can unmute yourself.
All right. Hi, my name is Sam Spearing. I work as the Housing and Mobility Coordinator for Bloomfield Development Corporation, and I also live in Bloomfield as a renter on Pearl Street. I'm here today to speak in support of the expansion of inclusionary zoning to Bloomfield and Polish Hill. Thanks to Councilwoman Gross and great partners like Lawrenceville United and Lawrenceville Corporation, we've seen the success of inclusionary zoning in Lawrenceville, and we want to replicate this tool for Bloomfield and Polish Hill as well. We already know that according to data collected by the Planning Department, roughly 41% of renters in Bloomfield are cost burdened, which is more than double the citywide average. City planning also has a displacement vulnerability index created using data on income, education, race, and renter status to analyze risk of displacement. The vulnerability index showed that out of 5 census tracts in Bloomfield, 2 were classified as vulnerable and 1 is somewhat vulnerable. From 2010 to 2020, Bloomfield lost 30% of our Black population. People already have been and are being displaced, and we know that affordable housing options are only becoming harder to find in Bloomfield. I also want to acknowledge that many of the amenities that are driving new development, higher housing costs, and increased desirability in Bloomfield's housing market demonstrate the advantage of creating new affordable units. Bloomfield is walkable, bikeable, and well served by public transportation. Grocery stores, farmers markets, and healthcare facilities are all easily accessible from Bloomfield. Locating new, quality, affordable units in neighborhoods like Bloomfield is essential to allowing low-income renters or homeowners the access to the same opportunities as others. I also want to briefly acknowledge 2 of the biggest questions Bloomfield Development Corporation heard during multiple public meetings about inclusionary zoning. The first question was something along the lines of, why only 10%? Which we've heard a bit today. It demonstrates a consistent desire for more ambitious affordable housing goals for the entire city of Pittsburgh. The second question we heard several times was, why not do this in X neighborhood? And to that end, we'd like to encourage further expansion of inclusionary zoning, which is already being discussed in the Oakland Neighborhood Plan. Our neighborhood and neighbors need tools that create new affordable housing units in Bloomfield. I'm strongly in support of expanding inclusionary zoning to Bloomfield and Polish Hill and beyond. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Spearing. Next, we'll have John Carson, followed by Cyan Palish.
Hello, I'm John Carson. I live at 3102 Burton Street in Polish Hill. Lived in Polish Hill for 7 years now. It's a very wonderful kind of mix of people, people from all walks of life, different income levels. And I think the inclusionary zoning policy will help kind of maintain the character of the area in that respect. I agree with some of the people who've spoken already that I wish it was more than 10%. I wish all inner city accommodation in Pittsburgh was at affordable rates, but I think this 10% policy goes some way to addressing what's needed. And I think it's good news for Polish Hill and Bloomfield. The other thing is that there are already various kind of sizable developments happening on the edges of the Polish Hill neighborhood. And I think it's important and timely for this policy to be implemented right now, so that those developments will include some affordable housing.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Next, we'll have Cyan Palish, followed by Richard Swartz.
Hi, my name is Kian Palish. I'm a resident of Greenfield. I also work at State Representative Sarah Inamorado's office and provide direct constituent services to our neighbors across the 21st House District. So that district currently includes Bloomfield. The new line is going to include both parts of Bloomfield and Polish Hill. Today I'm speaking on behalf of Representative Inamorato and our office's support for the inclusionary zoning expansion. First, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Gross for drafting this bill, as well as the community groups who provided input and the residents who spoke up. The stories definitely humanize this policy debate. As a resident of Lawrenceville, Representative Inamorato has spoken in favor of the inclusionary housing interim planning overlay district in Lawrenceville in 2019. Since then, we've seen inclusionary zoning create 40 direly needed new affordable units in the community. So we look forward to any expansion on that success. The affordable housing shortage in Pittsburgh is taking the greatest toll on working families and on seniors on fixed incomes. According to January 2022 report from Realtor.com, Pittsburgh rents across the city shot up 18.6% year over year. That's more than double overall inflation. So our office and other legislative officers address these disparities daily when we're preparing property tax and rent rebates for low-income seniors, or helping displaced residents find new housing, which is sometimes far from their jobs, far from transit options, and from their long-standing communities. For decades now, local inclusionary housing programs have proven to be one of the most effective tools for producing new homes affordably to working families and creating strong, diverse neighborhoods with a range of housing choices. So I thank you for listening to my testimony. I thank you for considering this expansion.
Thank you, Mr. Palish. This is our, let's see. I think we have next Richard Swartz, followed by James Eichenlaub. Mr. Eichenlaub will be with us in the audience here. Mr. Swartz, you could unmute your mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say that the Bloomfield-Garfield Corporation Board of Directors voted back in December to support the inclusionary zoning overlay district being extended to include Bloomfield. The district, in case you don't realize it, will extend along the southern side of the Penn Avenue corridor, which comes right up to the Garfield Friendship Business District. So I think while it's clear that we are not going to see any new dense residential development in that part of Bloomfield in the near future, it is quite possible that as existing buildings continue to age, there will be developers interested in amassing adjoining properties and attempting to build larger residential developments. This could also be true, especially south of Liberty Avenue, and we hope that developers understand that what we're advocating for is for people who live in our community today. I had a call just this morning from a woman here in Garfield whose landlord told her yesterday that he's raising the rent from $1,050 a month to $1,250 per month on her 3-bedroom unit. This came without much advance warning, and this is a story that we are hearing literally every week in the Bloomfield and Garfield neighborhoods. There will be opportunities for dense residential development in Bloomfield coming down the line. As many of you know, the Immaculate Conception Church and school building are either closed or destined to be closed. They sit next to a residential district. We also have along Liberty Avenue, large parking lots that still exist. And as we've seen in East Liberty, there have been a lot of developers now coming forward wanting to purchase city parking lots or parking lots owned by institutions and do dense residential development on those sites. In Garfield, we are not content to have just a 10% affordability for any new development. We're asking developers to achieve 33%, which could include both rental and for sale housing developments. And we're meeting with some, I think, cooperation from private developers who understand that the city has a character to it. In Garfield and Bloomfield, that's a working class character, and we want to preserve that for as long as possible. So we encourage council to vote in support of this legislation, and hopefully we'll see some additional affordable housing in these neighborhoods.
Thank you. Next, we have James Eichenlaub, followed by Jackie Smith.
And I provided copies for members of council, some extended studies and references to my studies. Good morning. My name is Jim Eichenlaub, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Builders Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh and the Apartment Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh, representing developers and builders of residential housing operated in southwestern Pennsylvania, including the city of Pittsburgh. Combined, our organization represents over 600 companies who work in residential housing. I'm here today on behalf of the members to object to the proposed expansion of inclusionary zoning overlay and ordinance provisions in general as a means to generate affordable housing within the city of Pittsburgh. Since 1938, BAMP has been an advocate for affordable housing, promoting public policies that serve to make the American dream of homeownership a possibility for all. At the same time, BAMP has been a staunch defender of private property rights and will oppose any attempts to limit the constitutional rights of citizens and against laws that would limit the freedoms of citizens to enjoy the rights and privileges protected under the Pennsylvania and United States constitutions. The ability to produce new housing at an affordable cost is challenging due to many factors. Rising interest rates, material and labor costs are all factors impacting the price of new homes. So too is the unintended cost of government regulations, such as new building codes and the land development approval process. A recent study of the National Association of Home Builders determined the price of a home is increased by 23.8% for new homes and by 30% for multifamily projects due to government regulations alone. Inclusionary zoning is one such regulation that serves to increase the affordability of homes. It's important to note, too, that similar study finds that for every 1,000 increase in the cost of a home, 117,000, almost 818,000 U.S. households are priced out of the market. The city's inclusionary zoning ordinance is one instance where a government requirement with good intention oversteps the legal authority of Pennsylvania local government and will only serve to increase the cost of housing by requiring developers of housing to subsidize a specific number of housing units designed as affordable. What inclusionary zoning does create is a distinction between private development housing that is built outside of government involvement. BAMP supports government programs to incentivize the creation of subsidized housing, but must object to government intervention in private land transaction and development projects. This inclusionary zoning does not impact the government participation in projects, but does have a negative impact on housing cost of private developments. Inclusionary zoning is essentially taxes on production of new housing. These programs increase general housing prices to cover the cost of subsidizing the designated affordable units, and as such, further limit the housing opportunities for moderate income families. As such, the very goal of increasing housing affordability for citizens is hurt by rising costs
Just
passed on to
3 minutes.
non-subsidized
I'm sorry, Mr.
units.
Eichelon, that's your 3 minutes. And let's
Right,
move
you can see
on.
my report.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Jackie Smith, followed by David Brangen. Jackie Smith, you can
Hello.
unmute.
Yeah.
There you are.
Hello. Thank you, Councilperson Gross, for introducing this legislation. And I'm Jackie Smith from Parks Place neighborhood, and I work with the Human Rights City Alliance. I also teach sociology at Pitt, where I do research on the global economy and its impacts on urban housing policies. So I've thought a lot about this issue, and I shared with the clerk a report that I just put out with some colleagues where we did some research on Pittsburgh's housing policies and its impact on affordability of housing in our city. I want to support this legislation as one small step towards expanding the toolkit of policies that we have and that we use to preserve and protect affordable housing. And I think the council has to really take seriously its job of preserving and protecting existing affordable housing and to remedying some of the past damage of lost affordable housing that has happened over recent years. It's urgent that we do much more to make sure that we stop displacing Pittsburgh residents with our development policies. And so the report that I mentioned was issued by the University Center for Social and Urban Research here, and we found a link between existing policies that have favored privatization and the protection of the property rights of developers. And we found that has contributed to mass displacement of Black residents in particular, and a decline in the overall availability of affordable housing. So we haven't been remedying a growing problem, and we've been deepening the crisis with existing policies. But there's some other costs as well in terms of the loss of public assets, including land and tax dollars that could be put to much better use. And we also document that the existing policies of privatization of housing have undermined our democratic process and alienated residents from the political processes. And we need to take more concerted action to address this. And one of the things our local organizations have been doing is this week, we've invited a global leader in housing policy, Ms. Leilani Farha, who's the former UN Special Rapporteur on the right to housing. She did a press conference there at City Council yesterday. And she, as an expert who's visited many cities and thought deeply about this issue and an expert in the law, she has been emphasizing for urban, local governments the responsibility that you have to protect people's right to housing. It's a human right that is protected in international law, and you're responsible for implementing this. Expanding the tools that we have to really make sure that our policies are people-centered and that are responsive to the responsibilities that local government has to international law and equity is crucial. Ms. Farha also, as an expert who's looked at many different cities and seen some that have gone past where they can really.
We've lost Jackie Smith. Next, we have, thank you for your comments. And also, Madam Clerk, do we have the report that Professor Smith mentioned? We can make sure that all members receive it. Thank you. And so next we have David Brangen, followed by Andrea Boykowicz.
Good afternoon. This is Dave Brangen, Executive Director of Lawrenceville United. Our mission is to improve and protect quality of life for all Lawrenceville residents. I'll keep my comments kind of brief. Just want to echo thanks to Councilman Gross, all of City Council, as well as the staff of City Planning and Zoning for having gotten us this far. I do think obviously it makes sense to broaden the geography of inclusionary zoning. We've seen it. We believe that this is absolutely a success story here in Lawrenceville. In addition to more neighborhoods benefiting, it also makes it much more simple for developers when they're doing development. What developers often like, in our experience, is consistency, clear expectations, and clear protocols for how to follow. And having a consistent pattern for the entire city is good for everyone. You know, the neighborhoods in Bloomfield and Polish Hill are super important to Lawrenceville residents as well, and our neighborhoods bleed into each other in ways that Rick from Bloomfield Garfield Corporation, I think, talked a lot about. I want to commend the organizations in Bloomfield and Polish Hill for taking this up. Another point I'd like to make is just want to encourage City Council to also devote resources to actually implement this policy. City planning desperately needs a staff person to oversee this program so we can monitor it, make adjustments over time. And I really would encourage City Council to prioritize that in the budget process. As others have shared, 10% is not enough, and we can and should continue to push for more. I do want to note that previous studies performed by city planning and national experts said that 15% was already achievable in hot markets like Lawrenceville. So we should at least do that right now. And just to respond to Mr. Eichenlaub's comments, I just want to note that we have 2 projects that have already gotten permitted and approved. One of them is leasing as we speak. So the notion that this is going to kill development is just plainly refuted here in Lawrenceville. It is absolutely legal. This has been held up in many, many states all across the country. It is absolutely legal here in Pennsylvania. Central Pennsylvania has already had a policy on the books for many years. And the incentive programs do not work. We know this from the research. While they're important to offer, we do have one here in the city of Pittsburgh, as city planning said, without a mandate, they do not generate affordable housing. And I also just want to note that we're very open to, going open book and looking and reviewing the policy to see how it actually, operates on pro formas. We've never received any outreach from the building association, from RAMP or any of the other interest groups that represent developers to actually, express any concerns in the 6 years we've been advocating for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brangan. Next, we have Andrea Boykowitz, followed by Christina Howell.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Andrea Boykowicz. I'm a resident and a homeowner in Central Oakland, and I work as the Assistant Director at Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. And I'm here today as an ally for my colleagues in Laurel, Bloomfield, and Polish Hill to celebrate what I hope will be the extension of the inclusionary zone overlay district to include those neighborhoods, and to let you all know that we cannot wait to have the extension also for the entirety of the neighborhood of Oakland. As Sam mentioned earlier, yes, this is an integral part of the Oakland plan, which council will be reviewing pretty soon, and you will see the ways in which IZ is really central and essential to the achievement of our greater affordability goals in Oakland. Had inclusionary zoning been in place in Oakland only 5 years ago, there would already be close to 100 affordable units in Oakland at this time. There would be another 50 units that are in process. As it happens, there are no such affordable units currently in process or completed. We are hoping that inclusionary zoning will be in place before too many more new high-density residential developments are advanced in the Oakland neighborhood. Affordability is an enormous concern for us here. I would like to echo what other people have said before, which is that it's only a component. It is not a silver bullet. It is not going to solve all of the affordability problems that we have in Oakland. many of the affordability problems that we have in Oakland are different than those that Lawrenceville and Bloomfield and Polish Hill experience. And that would be a subject for another day. But the crying need, not just for our neighborhood, but for our city as a whole, and for the region, for these kinds of residential units that are within walking distance of employment centers cannot be overstated. And so I want to just wrap it up, thanking again Councilwoman Gross for her amazing leadership on this issue, and also Mayor Gainey for centering affordability in discussion about the future of development in Pittsburgh. We are very hopeful that Oakland is next. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, and our last pre-registered speaker is Christina Howell.
Hello, this is Christina. Hi, I'm Christina Howell. I'm a resident and homeowner in the neighborhood of Bloomfield and executive director of Bloomfield Development Corporation. We are the registered community organization, or a registered community organization in the neighborhood of Bloomfield. And our mission is to build a thriving, diverse community through equitable engagement, and with the goal of a Bloomfield where everyone can build a home, a business, and a future. I'd like to thank those folks here today from outside of our neighborhoods, those allies who are supporting Bloomfield and Polish Hill in our quest to achieve inclusionary zoning. And we very much appreciate that. And also thank the groundwork done by our neighbors in Lawrenceville and the visionary leadership and advocacy of Councilperson Gross. I'd also like to really quickly thank Andrew and Phil at City Planning, who have really held our hand through all of this and helped work through the small details that we would not have understood, and also for all of their intense community engagement work. And last, to Mayor Gainey and his staff for their commitment to creating affordable housing and for their testimony at the Planning Commission in support of our expansion. While the East End is in high development demand now, and for the last 10 years, it wasn't always that way. If inclusionary zoning had been in place over the East End, we would see so many hundreds more new units of affordable housing than we have now. And we're lucky that we have the opportunity at this point to instate inclusionary zoning before many large developments happen in Bloomfield. In 2018, BDC convened the Bloomfield Gateway Community Planning process, where residents and stakeholders overwhelmingly identified affordable housing as a priority for the SureSafe site. And as this commission heard in a much earlier briefing, it had, oh no, never mind, sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing. Then in 2019, BDC undertook a housing survey to understand the of-the-moment situations of residents regarding housing, which resulted in our 7-year affordable housing strategy and work plan. Roughly 57% of respondents of that survey reported spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Again, that's 57% of respondents, all Bloomfield residents, spent more or spend more at that time than 30% of their income on housing. During those workshops and meetings, we met with overwhelming support to create more affordable housing. And this inclusionary zoning is only one of the tools in our affordability toolbox moving forward, but a very important one. BDC has watched Lawrenceville carefully, discussing IZ at length with those community organizations and with Councilperson Gross, and doing work with the community to raise awareness of how the available tools to create and preserve affordability can be used in Bloomfield. While 10% of units in one development is a tiny drop in the bucket of need, and we would support a higher percentage as well as a lower AMI threshold for renters, it's a start. BDC is certainly asking and advocating for a higher number of units and lower income threshold, plus that housing developers accept housing choice vouchers in all developments that are currently proposed. When we talk about IZ,
that would be 3 minutes. Thank you, Christina Howell. And that exhausts our registered speakers. I don't believe we have anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak. But if members wouldn't mind, and Madam Clerk, I did receive a short letter of support also from the Friendship Community Group, which is also a registered community organization that borders it. And I'll just include that briefly in the record if you don't mind. A resolution from the Friendship Community Group, resolution in support of Bloomfield and Polish Hill inclusionary zoning amendment adopted by the Board of Directors of Friendship Community Group on November 10th, 2021. Resolved, whereas the Bloomfield Inclusionary Housing Planning Overlay District is necessary to increase the production of affordable housing to meet existing and anticipated housing and employment needs and provide a diverse range of housing choices within the Bloomfield neighborhood. And the updated zoning will provide adequate balances by ensuring that the neighborhoods can continue to offer new housing units at a variety of price points. And the intent of the Bloomfield Inclusionary Housing Planning Overlay District is to promote the public health and welfare by increasing the supply of affordable housing for a range of family sizes and promoting economic integration within Bloomfield. And due to the unique circumstances involved with the development within Bloomfield, the existing zoning mechanisms do not serve to encourage quality, economically balanced development. And because remaining land appropriate for residential development within Bloomfield is limited, it is essential that a reasonable portion of such land be developed into housing units affordable to low and moderate income people. The Friendship Community Zoning and Development Committee supports and advocates for the City of Pittsburgh's Planning Commission approval of the Bloomfield Inclusionary Housing Planning Overlay District and passage of the same by Pittsburgh City Council. And Madam Clerk, there are also a variety of other emails that we received about today's public hearing for people who couldn't testify. And are those brought forward into an attached and legislar to this hearing? Yes, yeah, if you could do that so that, again, so the public can go to Legistar and go to this public hearing on the calendar dates, and then can both see the video testimony, but also read the written testimony. That would be helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I neglected some 15, maybe more minutes ago, maybe half an hour ago, to acknowledge that Councilwoman Strasburger has also joined us. My apologies, Councilwoman. Thank you so much for being here. So we have in chambers with us both Councilman Wilson and Councilwoman Strasburger. Councilman Wilson, would you like to make any comments before we adjourn?
Sure, that'd be great. I just want to thank all the speakers and all the organizations that have been supportive of this. Councilwoman Gross as well for leadership in this inclusionary zoning effort. I was supportive of the permanent expansion, or the permanent, it was a pilot and it was permanent for Lawrenceville. And I'm going to be supportive here. It was great to hear some insight from some, from advocates that are residents and also just advocates in general. And I'm interested in the conversation of, citywide expansion. Recently was briefed on the housing needs assessment, and it's quite interesting to understand all the different ways and tools that we can tackle this issue of affordability. It's an interesting one, since I was recently talking with we had some Philadelphia council members here, and I'll talk about a little bit of that conversation. We were talking about affordability, and they stopped using that word, and they use subsidized housing. It was just, a couple of members, just a conversation with a member. So maybe it's not representative of everyone in Philadelphia council, but I just think it's interesting here because this is on the property, the builder, and the developer and everyone. So it's an interesting perspective of, well, apparently there are tools to continue down the road of affordability that isn't subsidized. So I'm interested in that conversation in general, but being here at this hearing, it's quite. There's 40 from Lawrenceville, and I'm interested to see how many could be created here in Polish Hill and Bloomfield. Knowing that, based on the briefing that I had, that there's I might get the number wrong. It's within 1,000, but there's 13,000. Lack of 13,000 affordable units in the city of Pittsburgh within those certain AMI, within those certain area median incomes. So, interesting note though, there was a miscalculation back in 2016. So we calculate the people charged with calculating it it was the number that was in the news law was 20,000, and that was actually 13.6 thousand after recalculating. They're using that same calculation. So it was a standard national calculation that was improperly used in 2016. They went back and recalculated, so you'll see a new number of what was in 2016, and then now I believe it's still roughly around 13,000. So this is one of the tools to include more affordable units for people based on their income. So I'm happy to support, and it's a pleasure listening to everyone give their comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Strasburger.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Want to thank you for your leadership today and on this issue generally. I want to thank everyone who spoke today and echo the thanks that Councilman Wilson gave the city planning staff who have worked on this and all the organizations that have promoted this and fought for this. I too am in support, and I just wanted to echo what I've heard already, that in no particular order, that there's a need for this tool and additional tools, certainly a need for additional funds. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. We have tools, but then we need funds to do everything from helping renters and owners, but also to helping the well-intentioned developers who want to do the right thing, but need some subsidy, some gap funding to be able to make this work in some neighborhoods, to, any number of things, getting community land trusts off the ground. So much more that we have to do, but this is such a great step in the right direction. And I really do, to Andrea Boykowicz's point, look forward to the discussion in Oakland and to getting my own preview and kind of having it public, the housing needs assessment update, because I think that'll be very telling as to where else we would like to explore IZ. I can tell you that at least in Shadyside, where there is no mandated inclusionary zoning, there's definitely one development and potentially another development of high-rise apartments that just seeing the writing on the wall are already electing to include, either meet or exceed the inclusionary zoning requirements. And so that's the power of this, that one, I'm seeing that it's not necessarily, at least in some markets, tempering development interest, and two, that it is already doing good outside of the intended geographic area. And as we've heard, what I hear again and again is developers want predictability, and this adds some predictability in. So again, I'm supportive. I look forward to conversations about this in Oakland and potentially in other neighborhoods as well, where it's warranted, and we'll continue to follow this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'll just say for myself as well, I like to kind of recap what we heard, and very clearly heard a call for more than 10% of units from many of our speakers, pushing up to 30% is what some of our callers called for units in development, specifically in Garfield, trying to encourage 33% of units in developments being affordable. People talked about having a lower threshold than 20 units. So having this apply to smaller developments than 20 unit developments. And then also we had some callers who encouraged us to go to a deeper level of affordability. There are lots of moving targets if you're new to the conversation, so it's hard to keep them straight sometimes. But there is certainly a call for this to be even more deeply affordable, so that the rents would be lower than is currently mandated in the legislation. And it was nice to hear from a range of neighborhoods as well. So thank you again to all of the callers. As always, thank you to the very hardworking employees in the city of Department of City Planning, where I I think we also heard today in testimony, and I certainly support there being a bigger budget for the Department of City Planning. I always have things I would like them to do, and there are never enough people in the department to do them. So I look forward to that conversation as well. Is there anything else from council members? All right, then I will just call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.